When you remove the clutch plates from the motorcycle, it's a good idea to keep them in order. And you can see that I'm storing them in this little container that I fashioned, and this direction is into the engine. There are two basic types of plates. There are the fiber plates like this, and there are the steel plates like so. But there are also three different types of fiber plates in this motorcycle and two different types of steel plates. So the very first plate, the very last plate, these are two different types, and then all the fiber plates in the middle, that's a third type. And the way you can tell them apart, the very first plate has a bigger diameter than the rest of them. And the reason for that is because it needs to be able to accommodate this jetter spring here, so it has to go around it. And you can see that the other plates don't. And the last plate and the first plate, you can also tell them apart by the pattern that they have. So you can see that the channels between these little pads, this channel has parallel sides, this channel has parallel sides, but the 5 plates in the middle of the pack, you can see that the channels between the pads are non-parallel. And so there are 5 of these guys, and 1 and 2. As far as the steel plates are concerned, there are 2 different types. The very first steel plate in the pack toward the outside of the motorcycle is different from the rest of them, and it looks almost identical. In this clutch pack, you can see this plate looks almost like, well, essentially identical to this plate. They have the same dimensions. The manual tells you that there are different colors, but again, you can't tell that here. The first plate is supposed to be gray, and the subsequent steel plates are supposed to be silver. So I cleaned some of these guys up, and you can see that the subsequent ones look pretty silver. I haven't cleaned this one off yet. I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I'm just assuming it's going to look darker. I'm also assuming it's made of a different material. Now, the reason this plate, the last plate, the first plate, the last plate, are different from the rest, and again, this is my guess, is that the first plate is in contact with this surface, which is a soft aluminum surface, and the last plate is in contact with this soft aluminum surface or the pressure plate. So I assume that the compounds here are just a little bit less aggressive than for the plates in the middle. So the reason you want to keep these plates in order is because you want to take measurements of all of these things before you do anything to them, just to see if things are within spec. And so what I've done is, if you go to the manual, it'll tell you, for example, for the fiber plates, you want to measure the thickness of the fiber plates and see if the plates are within spec. Also inspect the surface and see if the surface looks okay. These look okay, but they're very close to being outside of spec. They're right on the border, so I'm going to be replacing all the fibers. If you're not replacing the fibers, another thing you might want to check is if these tabs, the edges are mushroomed. These don't seem to be. They look pretty square, so that's good. One thing that I think is important to think about is even if the fiber plates are within spec and your clutch has been slipping, why might that be? And if you just think about how the clutch is working, if it's been in there for many years, lots of heat cycles, this stuff kind of gets hard, right, and just chemically changes. So again, it's just my conjecture, but I have a feeling that just because a clutch has seen a certain amount of use, these plates, they may not be out of spec, but just because the material is now different than the fresh material, the plates might not be grabbing as well as they should be. Okay, let's talk about the steel plates. And you can see that I've already cleaned these up. So there's no spec that's provided in the manual as far as the thickness of these plates, but there is a spec that's provided as far as the warp. So let me show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these middle plates, and show you how I check for warp. So it really helps to have a surface plate like so. You can probably get something like this for, I don't know, about $100. They're not the highest of accuracy, but certainly, you know, for $100, but certainly good enough for this purpose. What I do is I put a little bit of oil, the same type of oil that's going to be in the bike, just motor oil, 10W40 in this particular case, on the surface. And then, so the way we're going to be measuring it is all these plates have a rolled side, rounded over side, and a kind of a flat side with a sharp edge. And by the way, that's another reason it's really important to keep all these things in order. So by the way, what I do here is if I took one out of sequence, God forbid I happen to bump this, I can just throw this little placeholder in there so I know that something is missing. Anyhow, so we're going to be testing these with a flat side down. But now, returning very quickly before I do that to the reason why you want to keep these plates in order. If you look at the plates as you pull them out, at least in this particular pack, clutch pack, all the plates were, the metal plates were situated so that the flat side was in, which means all the metal plates were situated with the flat side toward the pressure plate, which is kind of the convention when you install clutches of this type. If you ask me, it really doesn't matter whether they go flat side in toward the pressure plate. And by the way, the pressure plate, depending on the clutch design, can be here or it could be the other way, right? So, but they always say toward the pressure plate. I don't think it makes any difference, but it is a really good idea to make sure that all the clutch plates are installed in the same direction, meaning if one of them has a flat side inside, facing toward inside the engine, all of them should be oriented the same way. Okay, so now that I've oiled the plate and oiled the surface plate, the reason I do that, there's a little bit of suction and stiction here. So when I use the feeler gauge, the plate kind of tends to stay. I mean, it does suck into the surface plate a little bit, but it's not significant. And it actually, because I mean, I've seen people hold the plate down and try to check whether or not it's warped. Well, if it's really warped, you're going to change that. The stiction here is not so strong that it's going to affect the warp of the plate. I mean, your fingers are. But anyway, so the spec that the manual gives you is 10/1000ths of an inch, which is, in my mind, really high. Like if these plates were at 10,000ths of an inch, I don't think I would use them. So I measured these already before, so I believe that this plate, if you use a point or 7/7000ths feeler gauge, it's a no-go, right? So let's just see if that's still the case. So I'm trying to see, and so what the oil is doing is actually resisting, right? So I can kind of force the feeler gauge against the plate. So you can see that as I go around, it doesn't really want to go under it. So let's try 0.006, which will probably go under, from what I remember. And you can see that it does. See, in this particular location, I can kind of work it in. And here too. Here not so much. So basically 0.007 is a no-go, 0.01 or 0.010 is a spec. So these things are within spec. The next step that I'm going to undertake is take this glaze off. And what I've seen people do is just take some sandpaper and just do it like that. Well, that doesn't really help with the flatness of the discs, because I mean the key thing about these discs, some people replace them, and if you don't have a surface plate, it's difficult to tell whether or not they're warped. I mean, you can stack all the metal plates together and look at the light, but it's not a very accurate approach, I don't think. And so, but if you don't have a surface plate, it's probably better to just replace these discs. So now that we've checked for flatness, I'm going to sand this plate down, and the way I do it is with a sheet of sandpaper. I'm going to oil the surface plate a little bit more, and then I'm going to oil the back side of the sheet. You'll see in a minute why. So when I do that, the sheet's going to stick. And so again, I just used motor oil. The thicker the motor oil that you use, the better it's going to stick. If you use, this is 1040, if you use 2050, it'll stick even a little bit better than this. Okay, and the next thing, so what I use as just to kind of keep the sandpaper clean is a little bit of WD-40. It's a very thin oil. I mean, WD-40 is not really a lubricant, it's more of a solvent, but it's perfect for this application. So you can see what's going to happen. So by the way, I already measured the thickness of this. So you don't want to remove too much material off of this, but as you'll see, it's difficult to do that. So the way I do it is, I basically move the plate. It's a little hard right now. Oh, you know what? If I take the gloves off, I'll actually be able to grab it. Kind of use your fingernails and go in a figure-8 fashion. Okay, let's see how we did. So you can see literally a couple of passes have taken most of the glaze off. Let's go to the other side. There's some debris on this paper right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dab it dry. You don't want to drag this across the surface because it's going to leave paper particles on the paper, on the sandpaper. So just dab it, and it'll collect all the junk into the towel. And you can spray a little bit more WD-40 and just do the other side quickly. I just want to show you. Okay. Again, you can see it's cleaning it up pretty well. So just a few more passes and the plate's going to be clean. Now, as I mentioned, we don't want to make it too thin, but let's see. By the way, this is kind of telling you, you see, so there's more material here. It's making it flatter. So as I measure it again, I'm essentially getting the same measurement. So I'm gonna just sand it a little bit more until all the glaze is off. But for now, I'm just gonna place it here, but I'm gonna have to finish this. Another thing I want to mention quickly is the fact that the fiber plates have markings on them like so. You can see the markings right there. And the markings are only on one side, and the way the plates came out of the engine is the markings were facing out. So I really don't think it makes a difference which way these plates go in, but I think it's a good idea if there is, again, if there is some markings, it's telling you there's, you know, two different sides, make sure they're all facing the same way, and it's easier to have the markings out so you know which way things are going. So again, when I put everything back in, these plates are all going to face the same way. The steel plates are also going to face the same way with the flat side toward the inside of the engine. Of course, if the steel plates are out of spec as far as the warp is concerned, right, if they're beyond 0.01 inch, You would not be reusing them. You also want to examine the pressure plate, the surface of the pressure plate right here. And you can see that it appears to be in good shape. It's very smooth. And similarly, you want to examine the friction surface of the inner hub, or the clutch center as Honda calls it. It also seems to be in good shape, very, very smooth. You need to examine the jetter spring. You can see the orientation. So when you put it on, make sure it's bent out this way. And then there's a seat as well. And the flat part, so there's a rolled part of the seat and a flat part. So the flat part of the seat is toward the engine. And on this flat part, the jetter spring will sit. And then the rolled part is toward this friction surface of the inner hub. So as far as the steel plates are concerned, when you're sanding them down, if you lose half a thou, I believe that's okay, maybe even up to a thou. The bottom line is if the plate is out of spec and it's greater than 0.01, as far as the feeler gauge that fits underneath it, you certainly don't want to try to flatten it by sanding it down.